We have a speaker now. His name is Dr. Charles Asher Small. He was the director of the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. It's ISGAP. And he's also the Koret Distinguished Scholar of the Hoover Institution, Stanford University. Please welcome Dr. Charles Asher Small.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'm going to speak to you for a few minutes about the situation that Ari has been singing so eloquently about or rapping about. But I have a question for you. How many people know Kutub? How many people heard of Al-Banai? So these are people that the Jewish community needs to know. People need to understand the mind of our enemy. And I say this as a scholar. We have to understand the mind of our enemy. We can't just sit here and entertain ourselves and use Twitter and tweeting. We have to read. We have to educate ourselves. And the perseverance, the reason why the Jewish people are still here is, yes, there's the Torah, but also we study and we learn and we know how to negotiate in our environment. And we need to study about radical political Islam or Islamism. I'm not speaking about Islam and I'm not speaking about Muslims. I'm speaking about the Muslim Brotherhood and how they're using anti-Semitism not just to attack Jews, but they're using anti-Semitism to gain popularity in the Middle East, but also in the Western world, also in the United States of America. And we have to be conscious of this, and you have to learn and study this. So the radical political Islamists are the shock troops. They're the shock troops for the people, the anti-Semites, and the hypocrites in the West, in Europe, in Canada, in South America, and also in the United States. And I'd like to ask you a question. You remember Donald Sterling? Donald Sterling, the owner of the LA Clippers here in Los Angeles, he owned a basketball team. And in a private conversation that was illegally recorded, he said racist and horrible things. He said racist and horrible things. But in a private conversation, and later we now know that he has early signs of dementia, and in a jealous conversation with a friend, he said bad things. But it's amazing how the United States of America condemned his racist comments on this private telephone conversation with his friend that was illegally recorded. And this conversation, as we know, led to the condemnation of this Mr. Sterling, and the subtext of this conversation was also anti-Semitic, a womanizer and a slumlord and all of the like. And the media and the politicians and the NBA picked up on this and said no more racist discourse, even in private conversations that are illegally recorded. And the President of the United States also said that this conversation bothered him. So imagine, even the President of the United States, who's trained as a lawyer, commented on the case. And as we know, Mr. Sterling was forced to sell his team and his position in the NBA. But days later, and I have a question for you. The American government supported the Fatah-Hamas government. Weeks later, the United States of America under Kerry is pushing Qatar and Turkey to be involved in the ceasefire against the wishes of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Fatah. A few days later, the United States government sold $11 billion of aid to Qatar. And we know that Qatar is the Muslim Brotherhood. So the United States of America is selling weapons to the heart and the support of Qatar, which is funding Hamas and supplying them with sophisticated communication weapons as they attack Israel. So we need to think about it. Now, if the African American community and the civil rights community could be so strong in condemning a private conversation and saying there's no room for racism, how is it that our community is relatively quiet and silent when the Western world and the leaders of the Western world are selling munitions and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Qatar? How is it that this government congratulates Turkey? Erdogan, after his election a couple of weeks ago when he was elected, Obama congratulated him. Days before he won the election, he compared Israel and Netanyahu to Hitler. To Hitler. And I'm telling you, our community is asleep. It's a travesty that there's so little people here, and this is one of the best turnouts in the country. So, if I have one message for you, we have to urge our community, the human rights community, the Jewish community, the media, women, gay people, Christians, Muslims who are moderate and want to live in peace with other people, to wake them up and not allow Islamists to destroy Islamic societies and to destroy the name of Islam as they use anti-Semitism. They focus on the Jews, they focus on the Israelis, they focus on the Zionists as they destroy their own societies. And we have to remember, we heard music today. Music, Western music, started in places like Timbuktu and Mali, was the foundation of American and African American music, of rock and roll, of rap that we're hearing today. The origins comes from Africa. And in places like Nigeria, because of Boko Haram, and in Mali, they're stopping the music because music is for those who have been influenced by the West and are influenced by infidels. They're stopping the music, they're stopping the poetry, they're killing Jews, they want to kill Jews, and you can see in Nigeria, they're killing Christians. In places like Iraq and Syria, there's literally a horrific genocide in which the human rights community and our community has been relatively silent. So please, read about the origins of radical political Islam. Read about how it emerged, how the Muslim Brotherhood emerged nearly 100 years ago. Read how Morsi was a professor here in California. How does a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood come to California, be a professor, and go back home and get support from the West? We need to know the answers to these questions, and to be proud of who we are, and not just fight for the rights of Jewish people, but fight for the rights of democratic principles, that everybody is guaranteed to be equal under one legal system regardless of their background, and this is what's at threat today. So enjoy the day, but learn, study, read, know the mind of your enemy, create study groups, and through knowledge, action. This community needs to wake up and it needs to act. And remember the example of the civil rights community not too long ago in Los Angeles. They created an international scandal and they got rid of Sterling. We need to do something like that in our community. Thank you.
I'm so glad you got to speak